UConn is without Paige Bueckers, but opportunity is knocking for certain players. Who's going to answer the call? You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just wanted to come up to say how thankful we are for all of you. This podcast has grown so much. It's because of fans like you who we value. And we want to thank you because you guys have made us a top show at the network. So can't tell you how much that we appreciate that. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering both UConn men's and women's basketball, the hoops capital of the world. And we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. To show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to the Husky Ticket Project. Kevin Solomon and friends over there helping send kids from underserved areas to UConn games, men's and women's, and football and baseball and everything. And we're making a monthly donation to NIL as well. So if you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, and leave a review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better than ever with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, let's bring to the program T. Baker. T will be joining us weekly as a regular co-host as of today. We're very happy about that. And every Friday going forward, let's get him in here. Get you unmiked. All right, T. Question right out of the gates. Paige is probably out. She already missed one game, maybe two more, one more at the least. When you have this type of injury, it's a short stint. Gino doesn't have to panic, so he can experiment. Opportunity is knocking. Who is someone who will answer for UConn that likely wouldn't have gotten any run if Paige never gets hurt?
Yeah, well, hey, Mark, good morning. Glad to be here as a co-host with you. So, yeah, I think you make a good point that the timing is in some ways advantageous, that Paige, is injured in this, minor capacity during this stretch of Big East play. It does allow for UConn to experiment a little bit. I think, in terms of players who we would expect to step up, Azzi Fudd, and we saw that against Xavier. She is a superstar player as well. We haven't seen much of it, but she, is a dominant player when she's in the right space. And then I think we saw it with Allie Ziebell. She is a player who hasn't gotten tremendous minutes as a freshman yet, but is a talented recruit, top recruit, and is someone who, comes from a really strong basketball state, Wisconsin. There's a big grassroots program there and in terms of like developing players. So I'm excited that she had a breakout game. And I think she's the type of player who we can keep an eye on for getting minutes she might not have gotten otherwise if Paige wasn't within the rotation.
Yeah, and another thing that you made me think of, kind of like a sidebar with Azzi and others, Jana, the folks that are coming back from like major injuries, it also, when someone like Allie steps up, it doesn't, the one thing I was concerned about with Paige going down is putting too much of a load on top of Azzi, right? You have to lean on her more for points. If you get 17 points, she doesn't have to score 17 every night, but if you get contributions off the bench from Allie, from Morgan, Caitlin, maybe she didn't score the Xavier game, but all of that kind of adds up. I mean, Azzi only had to play 20 minutes in that game against Xavier. That's huge because it's only going to help her kind of get her knee fully back to where it needs to be, especially coming off of a knee sprain herself. So, and then you're seeing Jana start and kind of give some good contribution. While we go there, what have you seen from her in terms of her development? She's starting now. I think, that was the plan all along. I don't think Gino thought she was ready at the beginning of the year. So what are your thoughts and what have you seen from Jana Elfie?
Yeah, from Jana, I think I predicted in the beginning of this season that she's going to be the X factor for UConn this year. They have such tremendous depth and talent at the guard spot, but I think the bigs are really who need to develop and who make them a championship caliber team. That's been the tough matchup against teams like South Carolina, teams who have that strong developed post presence. And they lost Aaliyah Edwards, a WNBA caliber talent, an All-American. So I see her as sort of the piece that can really take them to that next level to win a national championship because she has the talent. So, for me, her ability to be consistent, to get her legs under her, which I think she's getting there. She had a major injury, an Achilles injury, but she's always the first to, have little spats with Gino, but also learning opportunities. You'll see them talking on the sideline. She wants to learn and he wants to push her. And that's the type of player that succeeds at UConn. So I've been really happy with what I've seen. And they don't have much depth at that position. Ice Brady's been inconsistent. Ayanna Patterson just had, her season-ending surgery. This is her second year missing in a row. So that big spot is critical. And if Jenna can consistently contribute at that level, I think she's the difference maker.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Did you happen to see that she got into law school and like that she applied and like they had like I don't know whose Instagram it was, but like they showed her reaction and like the whole team went crazy. It was pretty cool.
Dang, some people are just good at everything, aren't they? Smart and athletic.
But could you imagine being in a courtroom and 6'5" Jenna Elfie comes in and she's in like you could be like, I'm guilty, leave me alone. She's that would be incredible, very imposing. So someone else that could make a huge difference is scheduled to return in about a week. Gino said about mid-January, so we're on the 10th. Gotta think maybe the 17th, 18th, 19th area. Aubrey Griffin, who he is described as the best teammate for everybody, even in essentially a diminished capacity because she hasn't been able to play. What would her ability bring to this team, especially in the front court?
It's like you said earlier, I want to lower the expectation on some level because she's coming back from a major injury, but the way that she could perform when she, was consistently in the rotation was really that player who made a huge difference when UConn needed scoring, when they needed rebounding. She was a spark off the bench. Like, I just remember thinking when she went down last season, that was like a huge blow to their title chances, because she was that player she was kind of a Swiss Army knife, right? She can just do so much on the court. She's quick, she's athletic, she can get steals, she's a great defender. Like, if she's able to kind of come back, this is her 6th season as a Husky, which is, I think, the first time that's ever happened in the UConn program because the COVID year, and, it made sense that she would rehab her injury at UConn. So she brings just a tremendous level of experience. She's seen a lot of iterations of this team. She's a player that everyone seems to love. She's great to chat with. She's just a great energy on the team. And I think she brings that same energy on the court and makes other players around her want to work harder. So I can't wait to see her come back. I hope that, she's able to get back into that form and in her remaining time at UConn.
Yeah. And before we go to the break, I think the thing is even a 10 or 15 minute Aubrey Griffin would make a absolute dramatic difference to this team. And I think that's something that's been missing because it certainly was missing against USC in some of the other, in maybe a little bit against Notre Dame, even though that was more Hannah Hidalgo that did that to them. So, all right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about, kind of talked about it already, but I really want to hammer home this injury is a blessing in disguise and why it could lead to, building some confidence for some other players. We'll be back after the break. This message was from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get you to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you're got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give you the taxes and give your taxes the undivided attention you'll get for any, like, as if you were a superstar athlete, right? You get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger. You get the peace of mind of knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. So guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantee. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with T. Baker and myself, Mark Zanetto. The timing of this injury is kind of a blessing in disguise because, the first game you play, and this is no disrespect to the Xavier program, but they're in a transition. They were 5-9 going into that game, or 5-8 going to that game. Now 5-9. They only scored 27 points in the game. I've got to give credit to UConn's defense for, creating, I think, 32 turnovers. that led to 42 points. But they didn't have to. It's not like this injury happened and then it was like, oh, we're going to South Carolina tomorrow. So talk to me about that and kind of like the psychology of the team. And then let's dive into this Georgetown preview.
For sure. Well, as someone who's covered the team the past several seasons, that has just been one injury after another, one just devastating injury after another. I remember in the COVID season, they were down to 7 players, had to cancel some games. They physically didn't have enough players to play a basketball game, right? So UConn has been through this just really difficult stretch that psychologically takes a wear and tear on the team, right? But one thing that Gino and CD have always kind of emphasized is that it's next player up. It gives opportunities for players to develop. I don't think we would have seen the development we saw from players like Ashlyn Shade or KK Arnold last season. If we had a fully healthy squad, they wouldn't have been freshman starters, right? And we've seen their growth, and we've seen how now they're really elite, high caliber talent for the team. So I think these, really devastating injuries, and this one isn't, fortunately, a season-ending injury, but UConn has practice with this, right? Is just putting next players in the rotation, figuring out rotations. And I think that helps them down the stretch in the season, because you never know in the Final Four game in the last minute who's going to foul out, who's not going to be available. And you need to have a player who's been in that moment, who's tested, who can step up. And I think that historically, Gino's played pretty tight rotations, and that's a criticism he's received as a coach. But it's because it takes time to develop trust, and he's a player. Sure. He's the type of coach who wants to trust you, who wants to see that what you're doing in practice is going to translate on the court, and he tests you. So in some cases, he's not given the option, he has to play some players. So I think it creates this opportunity where in this middle of the season, you can experiment with rotations. You can kind of see other players who are, have what it takes to step up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think some of the criticism that Gino gets for his tight rotations are kind of like, I think it's how do you criticize a coach who's been so successful? I think you can, but it also kind of makes you look like you're trying to find something. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's always been, even when people criticize him in the UConn fan base, you know what I mean? So whether it's haters who just don't like UConn because they win all the time, or it's internally where it's just you're spoiled, I think that's a big part of why Gino's personality is so perfect for this role, because he's just like, I do what I do, and we win. That's the bottom line. Yeah. All right, you're a Big East beat reporter. You have covered this league for quite some time. Talk to me about Georgetown. They have kind of a 3-headed monster with Ariel Jenkins, Kelsey Ransom, and Victoria Rivera. They were held in check, pretty much all of them, considering their points per game in their first appearance. What do you see from this game without Paige? Like, does Georgetown give them a scare at least early? Because there have been a few games this year already even with Paige where they haven't come out of the gates and played well. They did against Xavier. So what's your thoughts on this Georgetown game coming up?
For sure. Well, I want to back up and just talk about Georgetown as a program, because
sure, please.
They've been through an incredible amount over the past couple of seasons. I don't know if fans are aware. Prior to last season, their head coach, who's actually a Tennessee Vol legend, Tasha Butts, died of breast cancer just before the season. And then Darnell Haney, who was just hired as their assistant coach, took over the head coaching role. And that man has done just such a tremendous job inspiring this team. They made it to the Big East championship game last year for the first time in program history. And, I'm not an athlete or a basketball player, but I'd run through a wall for him. Honestly, he can just get his players pumped, and he took over a tragic circumstance and made it into something really special. So I just want to give them credit for that, what they've been through outside of basketball. Like, sure, this is a resilient team. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is Kelsey Ransom. She's Big East Defensive Player of the Year. She's an elite guard, and her offensive output has improved over time. She averages over 20 points a game. She had 7 points last time against UConn, 9 turnovers. She just had a bad game, frankly. It was a bad game. So I don't expect that to happen again. So I expect her to show up differently this time around. Ariel Jenkins has also been a reliable player. So I think it'll be, and it's on Georgetown's home court without Paige, so I think it'll be a closer matchup. I don't anticipate it being an upset necessarily. I don't expect that, I think it would probably be if I were to guess, somewhere in the 12 to 15 point win for UConn. I don't think it's going to be single digits. I don't think it's going to be that close, but I think it will be much closer than it was last time. And I think it's a good test for UConn to, go on the road against a team that plays really hard, that they just play hard, even if they're not winning every game. Like, this team is not going to take any plays off. So I expect them to be prepared, and I expect a competitive game. And I expect Kelsey Ransom to show up differently this time around.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, even if she cut her turnovers into like half in that last game, she's going to have a much better output. And you can't imagine she's going to have close to 10 turnovers in a home game. So I agree. I also appreciate you bringing up their circumstances. It's a good tribute to Georgetown and the resiliency. I think my only other question in this segment would be, I want to know, because 2 days ago I said Allie Ziebell is someone that they're looking to step up. Do you see anybody else? I mean, obvious ones like Azzi's going to be there. Sarah Strong is phenomenal. Who do you see as kind of like a wild card in this game that could, be the 17-point scorer, quote unquote, in this one against Georgetown?
I think we're just beginning to see like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Morgan Shelley. Gino has praised her. I love a tall guard. It's kind of in the mold of Katie Lou Samuelson. Like, it's just a scrappy tall guard who lengthens the court, can get rebounds, but is also an elite shooter. I see her as a future starter at UConn, and I think that she's going to continue to evolve into the player that fits into this particular UConn rotation. There's something that UConn's coaching staff is able to do with those tall guards that just, Ann Strother back in the day, for folks who have been watching that long, these tall guards who can do so much on the court, who can pull up from behind, the 3-point line, but also have a mid-range game, can drive to the basket. And like I said, lengthen the court. It's such an advantage to have a tall guard. And I see her just continuing to ascend during her time at UConn.
I love it. All right. When we return, we're going to get a look around college basketball with T here. Is LSU for real? 18-0. South Carolina just had a setback, and kind of the national landscape, because we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday. UConn's projected as a 2 seed. Can that change? Does it matter? We're going to talk about all of that coming up after the break. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to do live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and share betting lines around your team, which is, for us, I think T hit it on the head. When it comes to this UConn game, I know we're not talking about the NFL, but if you're betting on the UConn women, that line may be a little bit high, so you might want to not bet, but also they could also blow them out like they did against Xavier. So I always I'd never choose my picks. That's all. That's the only thing I will say about FanDuel. Again, if you're just starting, you get $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Yeah, I don't know if you knew that, T. Anytime I make a pick, it usually is wrong. So at least for betting purposes. So don't ever wherever you are, if betting is legal in your state and you want to, even if you're betting $5, proceed with caution. All right,
appreciate it.
Pick. There should be a segment called "Pick Sure to Go Wrong," and I would be the star. All right, so let's talk about around college basketball, because no matter whether we're doing a show entirely about UConn, the college landscape is around the UConn world, right? We're the hoops capital or the basketball capital of the world. So let's talk about it. LSU is off to a perfect start. What do you think about Kim Mulkey's team? 18-0. They just got a road win at Tennessee. Are they a legitimate title contender?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I don't know if you watched last night's game against Tennessee, but that was a fun game. Kaylin Gilbert, damn, like that last minute shot, like just ice in her veins. And in Tennessee, with a great crowd. So I mean, I think whenever you have a coach like Kim Mulkey, you have a chance at a national championship. Honestly, like she's an elite coach. And she has a tremendous coaching staff. She has top recruits, and she runs a phenomenal basketball program. So, you have Michaela Williams, who I think is one of the best sophomores in the country. You have Flau'jae Johnson, who is a rapper / elite guard. Like, this team is so dynamic, and they just have so many weapons that I absolutely see them as a title contender. I think that what the advantage that these teams in the SEC have that UConn maybe doesn't have is just the level of competition night in and night out. It's a grind every night. It's physical basketball. It's a battle in the post. And so every single night these teams are going to get tested. And I think that only makes a team like LSU stronger.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's also kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Do they cannibalize each other and like beat each other up, so by the time they get to the tournament, they're beaten up, and then the UConn is kind of left standing. So there's like two sides to that argument, and I see both, right? If you get tested constantly, that's a good thing, but if you get tested too much, sometimes you have too much internal bleeding, so to speak, to kind of get over the finish line. So we'll see. I'm curious to see what happens with the SEC, because national champion South Carolina, the big bad wolf on the block, lost one of their best defensive players, best players overall, and Ashlyn Watkins to a terrible ACL injury. We wish her the best. It's a huge blow for the Gamecocks. Like, how do you think that impacts their title hopes?
It's huge. I mean, it's huge. Like we talked about, it's not just that players go down with injury. It's the psychological aspect of it. You're used to a certain team dynamic. When your friend, when your classmate, when your teammate is down, that sucks. It hurts. So I think there's that psychological rallying that needs to happen after a player goes down. I think, it hurts perhaps their chances of defending a title, but they still have such elite talent. I don't know if our listeners have acquainted themselves yet with freshman Joyce Edwards. She's probably the second best freshman in this class. She's a hooper. She's going to just continue to evolve. And I think this gives her an opportunity to step into a role that maybe she wouldn't have. So when it comes to Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks, like I know that they are going to have, plan B, C, and D. And just wish the best for Ashlyn Watkins. She's got a tremendous future ahead of her. But I think that, certainly they're going to have to make some adjustments. I think they still are a legitimate title contender.
Okay. And right now, if you went on ESPN as a bracketology or any bracketologist on the women's side, UConn is a projected 2 seed in Notre Dame's Notre Dame side of it in the South Bend region. Do you think that's fair? I said on the show yesterday that I think that a 2 seed right now for UConn is fair.
Definitely. I think that's fair. I don't think they're in a 1 seed spot at this point. They're two sort of like quad one, quote unquote, wins, however you're calculating. We're against USC and Notre Dame. I mean, they had some high caliber wins, I think, against against North Carolina. But I think that in those teams that are legitimate Final Four and championship contenders, they lost those games. And so I don't think that they've showed they're a 1 seed. I think that Notre Dame certainly has. I think that the test that'll be coming up for UConn that'll really secure their spot potentially as a 1 seed is if they can beat both Tennessee and South Carolina. And that would be kind of a tremendous launching pad for them to that 1 seed. But I think it's fair.
Yeah. I also think it's possible that they beat Tennessee and South Carolina because, as we just talked about, South Carolina just lost one of their best players and their biggest defender down low because if anything, that was my concern with UConn playing in South Carolina is do they have the meat, so to speak, to kind of battle with some of the bigger teams? And the answer to that question might be yes, and it might be because South Carolina is diminished. And I think Tennessee showed last night that they're very capable of playing against some top talent and not backing down. So was kind of like interested. I did watch some of that game last night. I always have 2 TVs going, so we had the college football playoff, and then we had the game. I don't know why that just went balloons, but hey, whatever. But yeah, so I think that was a celebration for my 2 television setup. Which team outside of the top 5 do you think could potentially make a run? Is it TCU? I know Maryland just lost to USC. Is it potentially, someone like Ohio State? Who do you think?
So I am not sleeping on the Sooners, Oklahoma.
Okay.
They have a really just poised elite team. Reagan Beers, she is a transfer from Oregon State. I got to see her play in last year's regionals.
Elite name too.
Yeah,
Elite name.
truly, truly. And, they lost last night to Mississippi State, which, is, again, it's a grind in the SEC. Welcome to the SEC, Oklahoma.
Right.
They have just the potential, I think, to be a team that surprises a lot of people. Obviously, they beat Tennessee at Tennessee over the weekend. So I'm watching out for them. I expect that they will be a team that can make it further than people might predict in the tournament this year. And I've been continually watching them and just impressed with what I've seen.
Okay. Well, I think that was a really successful first program for us, T. I know this is not your first time being on, but I really appreciate you, making a commitment to us and doing it every Friday. And we're really excited about the partnership going forward. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, appreciate you. I can't wait to continue to talk about hoops and just, continue to grow the game of women's basketball. Appreciate being here.
Appreciate you. Tell people where they can find your stuff outside of coming on UConn, Locked On UConn every Friday.
So I'm a regular contributor over at The Next Hoops. I cover the Big East Conference. You can find me on social media platforms at MXTBaker on my X page or TBaker_WBB on some other socials. I know we're in flux with social media right now, but
sure.
You can find my name pretty easily, T Baker's unique name. So search for me and you'll see me covering Big East as well as UConn hoops.
Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, guys. This is another episode of Locked On UConn. Don't forget to follow us on X, Facebook, TikTok while you still can, Instagram. It's all at Locked On UConn. You can follow me at Mark Snetto CBB. Don't forget to stay locked on, stay connected. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm Mark Snetto for T Baker, asking you to stay locked on, stay connected, and remember, it's not just about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way it can't be done any better. That's our goal every day. Don't forget, go Huskies.